From the Up Coast Studios in Oklahoma City, you're watching The Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Trammell. It's time for our weekly inbox segment. We take your email questions and we try to answer them here. Send us your email questions and maybe you'll see it next week here on the inbox. Barry, let's get right to it with this question from PJ. PJ says, I'm a little confused about the latest hiring by Bob Stoops. Last year, OU ranked 37th in scoring defense and 55th in yards allowed. Not up to their standards, but not bad for a team with a hurry-up offense. He essentially runs off his secondary coach and his defensive coordinator and replaces them with the defensive coordinator and head coach from a team that was ranked 107th and 110th in those categories. Isn't that what got those guys fired at Arizona? I think PJ's done some research, and this is a legitimate question.
He's done some research. Here's my problem. I don't put any credence much in defensive rankings and statistical rankings, so I'm not going to. I don't use it to prop up teams. I'm not going to use it to bash Bob Stoops. I don't think you can label Mike Stoops a failure defensively at Arizona because of those numbers that we saw. I think early in his career at Arizona played very good defense. As recently as the last 3 years, Arizona's played solid defense. Got away from him at the end, but a lot of things go into those defensive rankings. Brent Venables did an excellent job, I think, coaching defense at OU. He didn't always have great numbers because of the environment in which he was in. PJ referenced that, the hurry-up offense. Hey, they're playing in a hurry at Arizona, too. So no matter where you come down on the Brent Venables and Mike Stoops side of things, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the numbers.
Yeah, and I think, statistics, we saw that with Oklahoma State, which I know this is an Oklahoma question, but last season, Oklahoma State, if you looked at those overall defensive rankings, they were among the worst in the country, but they kept teams out of the end zone. They got turnovers. I mean, so the overall defensive numbers, I agree with Barry. I don't think you can stack everything in that way and see it all by those numbers. But I will say this. I do think that the Sooners have to get some things figured out defensively, and I'm not sure that Mike Stoops comes in and waves a magic wand, Barry. I think they need to get some guys on campus. The recruiting class has taken a hit. They've lost some guys who they could have used at defensive back, maybe not right away, but long term. I think they got to get some things figured out. That's where Mike Stoops is going to he's going to have to bring some serious defensive philosophy, get some guys locked in on positions, let them develop. I think that's a big question. How much can they let some of these guys develop? How, can they find a spot for Aaron Colvin? Can they find a spot for Tony Jefferson? That remains to be seen, really. But it's interesting. We'll see what the spring brings for sure.
The key for this defense in 2012 is don't give up the big play. And frankly, Mike Stoops is pretty good. Mike Stoops guards against the big play. Yeah. Now, his lieutenant, Tim Kish, that's coming in. Tim, apparently, from what we hear, likes to pressure, makes the big play susceptible.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. All right, back to the inbox. This one comes from Gary. Gary says, I have to agree with Mr. Cuban, this is Mr. Mark Cuban, by the way, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, about the Olympics. I miss the days of the top college stars representing the USA in the Olympics, even against the foreign teams with older players. Barry, you wrote about this. Mark Cuban a little bit disgusted with the fact that the pros paid millions in the NBA, then have to go to play for their country in the Olympics. What do you make of this?
Well, Mark Cuban's got a great point. Why am I paying Dirk Nowitzki $17 million and then he goes and spends all summer playing for somebody else and risks injury and fatigue and all those things? Now, I do think this is a little bit of revisionist history. Yeah. No one was fired up when the American college players were losing the gold medal, so nobody looks back on those whimsical days. Now, if you did keep NBA players out of the Olympics, though, you've got a situation where the Spaniards, the Argentinians, all those people would not be playing either. Dirk Nowitzki is not American. So I think the American chances at gold would go up if none of the pros, if none of the NBA players played. Right. It would be a tall task, though, for the American college players. The pool is not great, remember, folks. It's not Lou Alcindor and Bill Walton playing college basketball anymore. But it would be a tall task to win gold with American collegians.
I totally agree. And yeah, I don't know if you can put this genie back in the bottle. They did away with that amateur, must be an amateur, to have that status to be in the Olympics. And once they did that, it opened the door to having NBA players, WNBA players, professional athletes in pretty much any regard competing in the Olympics. I'm not sure you can just go back and say we're going to change that. That's an Olympic-wide thing, Barry. Maybe NBA teams, if they're serious about it, they start putting it into contracts, but I don't know. That might become a problem with the collective bargaining agreement. I think this is a battle that Mark Cuban's not going to win. He might wish it were different, but I'm not sure it can be. I just think those guys are going to be out playing those games.
Well, I think he maybe can win it because take Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant with the Thunder. I mean, they've committed $160, $170 million to these guys in the next 5 years. At some point, you got to say, listen, we love you, we love our country, we like winning gold medals, but this is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to protect our investment.
Contract somewhere?
Probably does need to be. Although I think sometimes the players would just go along with the franchise. I think players feel pressure from society, from USA Basketball, from FIBA to go ahead and play.
And somebody like a Dirk Nowitzki definitely feels pressure where he is the star for that German team.
No doubt about it.
All right, back to the inbox. This one comes from Kevin. Kevin says, have you noticed when older people have what they live for taken away, they tend to pass shortly after that? Bear Bryant and Joe Paterno are examples, great ones at that. It is like their body loses the will to fight off some of the health issues that had been warded off to that point. So why didn't it happen to Bobby Bowden? A good question, Barry.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, to me, it's a little morbid. Basically, we're asking, why hadn't Bobby Bowden died yet? But here's the deal. I think Bear Bryant wasn't a great example. Joe Paterno was a great example. But those were 30 years apart. All kinds of people have quit doing what they love between now and then, and no glaring examples. I think everybody's different. The truth about and the Paterno Bear Bryant. Joe Paterno was a sick man. He had cancer. He didn't get the cancer after Penn State fired him. Bear Bryant died of heart attack and heart ailments. So I think it's an interesting theory, and I think it's probably true that when we do lose our passion in life, that sometimes our will to live subsides. But I think Joe Paterno had a lot to live for still. I mean, he loves his family. There's no doubt about it, tight with his family. It's not like he didn't have anything to live for. So I think that aspect's a little bit overblown.
Yeah, and I think everybody looks at obviously the timing and how quickly after Joe Paterno's reign as coach at Penn State ended and how quickly his death came, and you can obviously draw that conclusion. But yeah, I mean, I think Barry's right. I think Joe Paterno, while obviously so much is focused on football, his family was all, for the most part, right there in College Station. Got to see his grandkids. His wife, obviously, by his side. I think he was just a very sick. I mean, he had a break, a hip, I believe. So, he was in really bad shape, Barry. And I think the other thing, you just don't know how well each of these guys have taken care of themselves. I mean, I think that's another thing that you just never know. Have they gotten a good amount of sleep? Have they kept themselves healthy over the years? And then sometimes there's things like cancer you just can't avoid. So I think that's part of it too. You can't ever know. Maybe Bobby Bowden was, walking 3 hours a day and getting, his health was good. I don't know, but we'll see. All right, back to the inbox. Michael has this question. He says, what did we do to stay interested in sports before the Thunder arrived? Barry, have we not asked this question ourselves from time to time, especially with OSU and OU men's basketball struggles? Yeah, we've asked this question before.
Well, here's what we did. I know what I did, but I played a little high school basketball and chased girls. That's what I did the last time we didn't have the NBA and our college team stunk.
You chase girls?
Well, to a small degree. Here's the deal. Listen, here's the deal. This is new territory. The struggles of OU and OSU, that's recent. That's only since the Thunder came to town. Look at the last 20, 25 years. We had big-time college basketball every year before the NBA was here. It was Billy Tubbs in the 80s, then Eddie Sutton and Billy and Kelvin in the 90s, and then in also the 2000s. We had something to occupy our time. So we've never faced this before. Before the Thunder, we had great games at Gallagher, at Lloyd Noble. We had Kansas and Texas and all kinds of people come to town. This was new territory. Thank goodness the Thunder's here so that we do have something to that we sink our teeth in when the Sooners and Cowboys struggle.
Yeah, and I think this was pretty obvious to me last year. You had OU struggling in the last year of Jeff Capel, OSU struggling to make the tournament, which they ultimately did not do. So I realized this a year ago. Wow, without the Thunder, what would we really be watching and paying attention to? There's always going to be something, whether it's, off-season football stuff. We've had the OU women. But Barry, you're right. I mean, thank goodness this little rough stretch for OU and OSU coincides with having an NBA team in town, because it does. I mean, I think it allows us something to feel good about, and OU and OSU are going to get back. You see signs, there may be some ups and downs, but I think that they're going to get back. Maybe not to those glory days of Final Fours and all that sort of thing, not soon. But I think they're doing okay. I think they're headed in a good direction, but thank goodness for the Thunder.
The last time we had no NCAA tournament team and no NBA team, 1982.
Yeah, long time ago. I think you were chasing girls then.
Probably was.
Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.